we could just
You're
chat
taller
and
than
then
me.
he'll...
You look taller than me. Can I sit on the
sorry,
straw?
I'll slouch. Kia ora whanau, Sally Ann on the sofa this morning. And who is my guest today? Some of you might recognise this man. I sure did. How you doing?
Good morning.
Good to have you here.
It's nice to be here. I
Fabulous.
seldomly am interviewed live. It's always somebody else I'm pushing in front of a camera. So to sit here is a pleasure. It's one of the few interviews I'm actually doing during the campaign because I'm very serious about what you guys are doing.
Thank you. That's very kind of you. Now, big question to start off with. Why are you standing for election?
I've been pushing behind the scenes with politics for years, largely in Wellington before we moved into the Hutt Valley 10 years ago. And so I know how things work and how they should work. And I've been a big critic in various media about what things have been happening in the region. And this time, I'm getting to that time when the family's going to take over the business. I sort of resigned to being semi-retired, but that's not in my nature and my DNA. And I saw the things that were going wrong in my part of the city, which is in Eastbourne and the Bays, and then at the city at large. And I've had conversations from everything about changing dog bylaws to some environmental issues and some projects that I'd like to see in the Hutt. All these things sort of came to a point, and I said, well, the best way to affect a lot of these things is not to push from the outside, but to push from the inside. And that's what I can do well, is push from the inside.
Phil, I know you're a good pusher. I know that's a skill that you have, so that's brilliant.
We have to disclose, I did know Sally Ann a little bit before today. Our history goes back many years. That sounds awful, but it goes back many years when you were in Tourism Wellington and in the media, and I was sort of pushing around one of my various artists or celebrities and putting them on at the stadium and whatsoever. So,
yes, I thought this was quite
yeah,
fitting
I
for
like
you,
Elton.
actually.
Elton is looking over my shoulder.
Is.
He's been doing that for a long time.
He's fleecing you. It's brilliant. Yeah. Now, speaking of music, do you have a favourite dance move that you like to whip out at parties?
Well, there is. It's funny because I have been asked this before, and while my wife was a champion ballroom dancer, and in my younger years we used to sort of get on the dance floor at the rugby club or at some function, and we'd get a little bit carried away, and everybody would clear the floor. That's disappeared in recent times. So, but we have the history of having taught the Russian ballet how to do the bump.
What is the bump?
Well, the bump is an old sort of, shall we say, 80s dance where people don't want to know about it anymore, where you actually bumped your hips against each other and in the middle of a dance floor, maybe not politically correct these days or whatsoever.
I'm sure if you get consent, it's fine.
We're
We're all about consent here in Wainoa.
But what it was, we had the Russian ballet in town, and they were controlled by the KGB minders in those days, and we were at a function, and everybody was quite relaxed, and a certain hotel manager had asked them to go back at a social function at his hotel, which he later regretted. The bill was quite high, and we taught them how to do the bump. And the funny thing was, the following day, as they finished rehearsals and they were driving past in a bus, they were sort of bumping against the windows of the bus. So we corrupted the communist regime of the time.
That's quite a legacy, Phil, already that you've got there. I love it. Now, moving on to more serious things, what do you feel is the number one issue affecting Lower Hutt that you really want to tackle if you are successful in your campaign?
I think one of the things, and it's probably not one of the, shall we say, sexy subjects people bring up, but it affects them all. That is better governance within council, between council, the elected officials and council officers and the CEO. Sometimes, and there's been so many examples of that recently, where the officers drive the council instead of listening to what the elected officials have done, and both of them between them don't listen to the community. So
really?
if you
imagine what that would be like.
If you start off by solving the relationships between the various parties, that means everything from resource consents through to environmental issues, through to parking, whatever subject you want to put it under, gets more accurately resolved. The SNA situation in the Eastbourne and Bays area was a particular classic where a heavy-handed notice was sent out to people, and it panicked them, especially elderly people who thought all of a sudden somebody's going to tell them what's going to happen to their property, their land, when the intent was right in many ways, but you ask people. You don't come in with a sledgehammer and tell them this is what it's going to be. And where is it now? Legal battles between Forest and Bird and Council, and all these things where only the lawyers get rich, and that could have been avoided if people had actually talked and communicated at the beginning.
Yes, very much so. Agree. Okay, so
that solves all those.
It
So without saying, yes, I want to do this and build this, because I'm not into undeliverable promises, because I'm only one vote on council. I have got to have people around me that are also listening, looking and learning, then deciding and making a call. So I'm not going to stand here and say, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, other than to put that governance issue right and to bring things to the table. That's what it's about. If you don't do that properly, consult with people openly and be honest about it, then democracy has failed.
Wow. Okay. Moving on. Do you have a party trick?
Party trick? No. I have lots of party tricks.
Maybe not for public consumption. Is that the answer?
Well, if you've... The things... it's not so much a party trick, but I've found that when I've done some public speaking, keynote speaking from all sorts of different people, from sports groups to some pretty big organisations, that I tend to throw the me, and you want to hear about all my history out the window, and let's talk... Well, I do a Q&A.
Nice.
And inevitably that comes around to people saying, what's Elton John like? What are they like backstage?
That's a pretty good party trick,
it's a party trick, because I've been fortunate to have met so many people, and the who's who I've met, I've been very fortunate because of the work I've done over the years, that I've stood in a line and shook hands with Princess Di and Charles. I've sat just behind Grace Kelly at the Grand Prix in Monaco. I've 10-pin bowled with Mick Jagger. I started off in 1964 when, as a school kid with my little school uniform on, in a hotel in Wellington, I sat in on the press conference for the Beatles. I sat on the couch between Ringo and Paul, and in my little uniform watched this all buzzing around me. I dined on that for years. The irony of that is, and this is a little secret, nearly 15 years after that date, I was general manager of the company that brought the Beatles to New Zealand. So it was a funny little twist of fate. Yeah,
that's beautiful.
So entertainment's been in the blood, and that's why I get asked those questions. And I don't give away any backstage secrets.
You
that
don't
I
kiss
shouldn't
and tell.
But there are some, I could fill hours of the interesting anecdotes, and there are some interesting ones.
Amazing. Now, what I want to know now is, what are 2 top actions to protect the environment and protect nature that you would commit to if you were elected?
Well, one of them is exactly on the issues that you've been pushing here. We have got the problem of disposal of waste, of all sorts of waste, whether it's big landfill waste, whether it's recyclables. It's an issue that doesn't just go away. You can't literally sweep the rubbish under the rug. And people do not want it in their backyard, and rightly so. They shouldn't have it in their backyard. I think with new technologies that are coming out, especially in the Hawaiian example, where they're actually clean burning stuff away from the main areas, and they're using that to generate energy, those sort of things, we have to look at those technologies and look ahead of what we can and how we can do it.
We're very behind, because I've of course looked into hydrovacs and what they can do with that waste, and you can put that, you can process that on site, and you can actually take out the materials and separate the liquid out, and then you're back to clean liquid. It's a no-brainer.
It's a no-brainer. And the things, even with the legitimate clean fill, we're talking about the pathways between Petone and Wellington. We're talking about the shared pathway on the eastern side, on the harbour ward. Now, those areas are going to require fill when they're making them. So why isn't there a good out-of-the-way site where we can temporarily store some of the clean fill and use it to put into those areas when they're developed? Yeah. So we're actually using the materials in a sensible way.
In a better way.
And where we're going to need it. Otherwise, what are they going to do? They're going to dig away another hillside and throw it into the harbour?
Anyway, okay, more good questions. No, it's all good. What specific actions by council do you support to combat the climate crisis?
Well, first of all, you've got to engage with all the right science, the right people, and listen to them at council officer level as well as in the elected officials. We've got to listen to people like you in the community who actually, because of their passion for these areas and the environment, can bring things to the table that are often missed by in the wash of the politics or in the business of council. If those concerns are not listened to or people are shelved, so it's that listening element is important.
Yeah, of course.
But what the council is actually doing itself currently with its recyclable issues, with the especially here in Wainui with the clean fill issues and the tragedy of what's happening or still continues to happen, those things need to be sorted. Contracts that have been made years ago that are now out of date because of the context and the content need to be revisited. If new ones need to be brought to the table, they should. I would say that in a large percentage, the terms of a lot of those contracts would have been well breached many times over, and I've seen examples of that, and I think you know of some of those. So those contracts to me are therefore null and void and should be looked at and revisited. And in the scope of doing that, therefore you start to look for better solutions.
Good.
I think finding new locations, you can't just say the landfill and the clean fill and the recyclables are just going to vanish into thin air.
No.
They've got to go somewhere. So I'm not a person that will say no, 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 no. At the same time, you've got to offer the yes alternatives and do the work.
Yes.
A solution.
On a lighter note, who gets your vote for Bird of the Year?
Well, in Wainui, you've got to be a little careful. You really do. Mr. Mallard lives out here, and I believe he wants to bring the mower back, so I'd like to put the mower on the top of the list. They may have been a little lost.
This is a revelation.
Yes,
the mower, a candidate.
Yeah.
You heard it here first.
There may be one in the hidden valleys beyond here, and we've got to be careful that we don't sort of break that little secret. But
hey, that could be an incredible tourism venture.
Yeah, I think Trevor might have found something. And who knows, with genetic engineering and everything else, one of these days it may be implanted in one of your chickens outside.
Yeah,
and
who
it
knows?
It could be the mother to a rather large Kentucky Fried Dessert.
Who knows? Okay, to wrap up, what, Phil, is your go-to karaoke song?
Oh, that is an unfair question, because if this goes bigger than big and it goes out across the world, some of the artists that I've had over the years could get a little upset if I mention one without the other one.
Oh, fair enough,
you know?
fair enough. Very
so,
political
I've got
answer
to be
there.
political, but what would I say? My current favourite is actually a young Maori group called Alien Weaponry, who are a little bit on the heavier metal side of things. I would like to actually have them on an opening act for one of my concerts.
No, but this is karaoke.
You know.
You have to sing it. Come
yeah.
on.
Oh, I can sing. Have you ever heard me sing? Why do you think?
Quick, we better stop the video.
Why do you think I put somebody else on stage?
I thought that was a threat.
That's
all the time we've got. Thank you so much,
Hey, this
Phil.
has been a pleasure.
Good.
And for those people that who don't know me that well or would like to know more, I have got a website, and it's got a bird in it. It's called stuffed.kiwi.
Perfect.
That's my website. So have a look, a little bit more about there, and you might be a little bit surprised.
Very good. Enjoy your tea. Thanks for stopping by.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.